With this amount of money, you could buy the most expensive Toyota that is sold on the market right now, a 2024 Sequoia, fully specced out, with 32 PSA 10 Japanese base set Blastoises in the trunk. Or you could buy this one card. What's going on, you guys? My name is Matt, and I like talking about Air Pokemon cards. I put a lot of effort into this week's video, and I think it is the best one that I have done yet. So let's get right into it. Kicking things off this week, we have a Dark Arbok from Team Rocket set with a Holo Shift. Now you can see that the Holo portion of the card is shifted over to the left a little bit. What would that be, about 5 millimeters? Enough to be noticeable. I'd say this is about the next level where Holo Shifts actually start to be worth something. You can see some sometimes that are just shifted slightly over, but those really don't demand any price increase. And I believe the buyer got a good deal this week. Holo Shifts are one of the more sought after errors out there, and so yeah, I think this buyer got it for a good price. They bought it for $34.95. Next up, we have a silver border filler card from the Pokemon World Championships that was held in 2009. You see these cards show up in auction, just regular filler cards, but I think it's very unique to actually have one with a different back like this from the championships. And if you're unfamiliar with this error, this is where they have blank sheets on a uncut sheet of Pokemon cards just to fill in for the number of cards on there. And these are supposed to be removed, but sometimes they end up in packs. So clearly this ended up in a pack that was given away to some of the contestants from the World Championships, and is a very unique and interesting card. This card was listed for $600, but had a best accepted offer price of $300. Next up, we have a CGC 8.5 base set Blastoise with the red dot error. If you look under Hydro Pump, you can see the 3 water symbols on the left there, and the leftmost symbol has a red dot on there, and this is a repeating error. And this historically never gets much love. You can see the EVI, or error value increase, is negative 7%. So this actually sold for less than the non-error version. And I don't know why this error doesn't get as much love as some of the other Blastoise errors. Maybe this one is more prevalent, but I think the contrast of that red dot really is just very interesting. But yes, this card sold for $150 this week, and I think the buyer got a good deal. You will also see on the info portion where I put the sale price and everything, I added a new row called Matt No Pokemon, because there have been a lot of cards in the past that I had no idea what the Pokemon were, never seen them before in my life. I am a vintage boy at heart, so I know the first couple generations, and after that kind of fell off for the knowledge for me. So I thought it'd be interesting to show you which Pokemon I know and which ones I don't. Next up, we have an Execute from Jungle Set, and this has a repeating printer hickey on the top. Yes, this is a repeating error, and yes, I've always known that. This is not a repeating error as far as I'm aware. Yes, that's right, never been wrong. So this is a large repeating printer hickey. I really do like this. You can see the contrast that it shows above Execute there. You can see how it stands out on the card, and this card sold for a good amount of money compared to its non-error version. It was listed for $34.50 and sold for that exact amount, and had an error value increase of 3,385%, which puts it at number 10 this week on our list of error value increases. Next up, we have a PSA 8 First Edition Ivy Pikachu. Now, if you weren't familiar with this error, the first edition symbol should not be there. This should just be a promo card, but I believe the first edition stamp got mixed in with 1 or 2 of the uncut sheets, and so it got distributed. And you can see that this card always goes for a premium. This card was listed for $1,199.99 and had a best accepted offer price of $800. $800 for a vintage promo card. That is awesome. And with this high sale price came a high EVI. The error value increase is 4,611%, which is number 6 on our list of error value increases. Next up, we have a PSA 8 First Edition Ivy Pikachu that was listed for $1,200 and sold for $800. Where have I seen this before?
On the count of 3, we'll show them to each other, okay? Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Boy, I spent a lot of time making that video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. God, that's so stupid. I freaking love it though. But yes, very interesting. We had two first edition Ivy Pikachus, both PSA 8s, both sold for $800 from separate sellers, but both sold on the same day. I don't know what's going on, but I think that's very interesting. So this one had the exact same specs as the other one. Same sale price, same average non-error price. EVI is the same. And so I listed that number 5 this week on error value increase. Next up, we have a first edition Muck from Fossil Set. And this is an error that I was really unfamiliar with. So what the seller claims is that there is hollow poking through on the border of the card. To me, this just looks like damage and wear and tear on the card, but the seller claims that the card's in mint condition. And so this probably is an error, but I didn't see it really. Either way, it had this card selling for a decent bit more than it's supposed to, than its non-error counterpart. This card sold for $79.69 this week. One bidder. Next up, we have a CGC9 Energy Arc Trainer card from Neo Discovery, and this has a square cut error. So there is a well-known error site that I use to track different repeating errors, and on it, it claims that there are several square cut cards that were given out by the Wizards of the Coast employees. That was the old manufacturer of the cards. And it is documented that they gave out several square cut cards from the Neo Discovery set. So NFC or not factory cut cards are cool, but I think to have a backstory, a known origin of where the cards actually came from to makes these cards even more epic. This card was listed for $200 but had a best accepted offer price of $150. Next up, we have a CGC10 Azumarill from EX Team Rocket Returns, and this has an additional ink error. You can see below the error card that that is not a typical eBay listing, and that is correct because this was actually sold on PWC auctions. And the buyer of this card got an absolute freaking deal. Now, I did not see a CGC10 price listed on price charting, but a PSA 10 version of this card, non-error, goes for $425. So with this additional yellow ink error, you can see it all over the blue portion of the lower part of the card. CGC 10 for $120, I think that's an absolute steal. So if you are a card collector, error or not, I think you should check out PWC auctions. Obviously not sponsored, but I think you can get some great deals from there. Next up, we have a Gossifleur from Fusion Strike, and you will notice that I do not know what this Pokemon is. Never heard of it before. But this card is a test card, which I think is very interesting. So you can see it's missing all of the text. It just kind of has the basic graphic outlines there. And it looks like the non-error card is pretty bare bones itself. But to see it stripped down even more is very fascinating to see. You can see this is also a square cut. I do not know where the seller got this card from, but CGC graded it and they gave it the missing print layer error. So I'm going to count it in the top 10. You can see this sold for $400 this week. CGC 8, a typical grade 8 usually goes for around $8 for this card. So that gives the EVI 4,900%. And that is number 3 this week on our list of error value increases. Next up, we have a Green Grass Energy from Diamond and Pearl set. And this has a printer hickey. Pretty obvious where the printer hickey is. I always love when there is a ring around the actual hickey itself. It's not just a circle. It's a small circle within a larger circle. This might just be my ignorance, but how did the seller know what card number this is? You look on the card on the right, and there's no indication that it says 123 out of 130 for the set card that it is. That's just me not knowing. If you do know, please let me know. And I sort of think this hickey looks like a bullet hole. It looks like this card kind of belongs on one of those shooting ranges where you shoot out the targets and you can see where you shot. And I think there are a couple other error cards that I'd like to put on that shooting range as well. But yes, back to the card. Interesting error. Haven't seen this one before. Obviously, not a repeating error. And this energy card sold for $15 this week. It had a pretty strong EVI. Next up, we have a base set Hitmonchan with a miscut error. You can see there's an alignment dot in the bottom left corner of the card. And this card is definitely very bottom heavy. This card is so fat. How fat is it? It's so fat that it's on both sides of its family. This card is so fat that the Sorting Hat put it in Waffle House. This card is so fat that when it gets on the scale, it says, "To be continued." Some of you might have wondered what the hell was that, but if you've been watching me long enough, I think you might know. So yes, we always love to see a vintage miscut on this channel. And surely this is a once-in-an-episode find. I think I'm starting to be known as a little bit of a prankster. So yes, we have a different seller, and they are also selling a miscut base set Hitmonchan. And this one is top-heavy. And if you look above me, you can see that this card is actually in pretty rough shape. So I think that's why it did not sell for as much as the other one. And Inferno Games is a well-respected seller in the eBay community, so I think they know how to price the card. So yes, this card sold for $40 this week. Next up, we have Kabutops from Neo Discovery, and I gotta say, the artwork from this set is absolutely astonishing. I love it, and I always love to see these cards pop up for sale. And you can see this one has a crimp error on the bottom. But can we get away from this trend of showing cards at weird angles? I get that this shows the crimp pretty well, but the seller did not put a top-down view of the card itself. And this kind of reminds me of the view you have of Hagrid in the PS1 game of Harry Potter.
Alright, Harry, I'm going to send you on a pointless fetch quest while I go to the Leaky Cauldron to drink a butterbeer and sniff blow off hookers' arses. I still don't know what I'll see you later, Harry.
God, that's so
What the
stupid.
fuck?
I think my analytics say that most people watching this video is around the 25 to 35 age range. Even if it's a little older or a little younger, that's okay. But if you are a kid, I'm sorry you had to see that. But yes, back to the card. Cheap, cheap, cheap. I think this card sold for less than it should have. You can see it had the EVI of only 2%. So congrats to the buyer of this card who bought it for $25.49. Next up, we have a Lickitung with a crimp and cut error. You can see the top side of this card got lopped off and crimped, and it helped it sell for a lot more money. Now, if you get a cut and crimp error severe enough where it's further down on the card, sometimes you will get actually both parts of the card, but you can see that this wasn't too far down on it, but still a very, very interesting error. This card sold for $41 this week in auction and had an error value increase of 3,594%, which is number 8 this week on our list of EVI. It's my dog, Moose. He's sleeping the whole time I'm filming the video. I love that puppy. By the way, if you are a repeating viewer, you can see that I have my microphone mounted, different from last week's video. I took a monitor arm and took a mounting plate and bent it, and I was able to attach the microphone to it. So pretty proud of this. I think it looks awesome, and I love the way it makes me look on camera. I feel like a DJ. Next up, we have a stamped Lugia from Unseen Forces, and this has a print line and an upside-down Pokeball error. Kind of an interesting error. So you can see on the card on the right, top portion of the hollow is actually missing. I believe this is classified as a print line, but also the Pokeballs on the card are upside down. Very unique error, one that I have not seen before. I like the missing portion of the hollow there. I think it makes it a very unique card. And this card was listed for $300, but had the best accepted offer price of $215. And an error value increase of 3,460%, which is number 9 on our list of EVI. Next up, we have a first edition Machop from Team Rocket set, and this is the Faded Stamp error. Side note, I think Faded Stamp Machamp would be the coolest error name ever, but I don't think there's an error like that, so we're stuck with this. Also, I did not know until I was writing the script for this video that this is actually a repeating error, so let me read you the description for it. A few unlimited copies were found with the Team Rocket set symbol partially faded at the bottom right of the R. So yes, this is the repeating error, and it sold for a good amount of money. EVI of around 1,700%, and this card sold for $43.50 this week. Next up, we have a CGC10 base set Beedrill with the D.offending error. Under Poison Sting on the card on the right, you can see that there is a period after the D in defending. This is a repeating error and always sells for a lot of money, especially in the CGC10. This card sold for $1,150 this week. And one thing I was shocked by is seeing the average non-error price for a CGC10 for this Beedrill. $20. I didn't believe it when I saw it on price charting, but sure enough, I looked it up on eBay. You can see right above me, it's right there, that the latest sale was $20 for this card. So that gives the error value increase 5,650%, which is number 2 this week on our list of EVI. I hope this isn't too much of a spoiler, but this week is the most graded cards that I've seen in our top 10 list. I think it's very interesting. Next up, we have a PSA 10 Gem Mint 10 Ancient Mew promo card with the Nintendo error. Bottom of the card, very hard to see here. It says Nintendo instead of Nintendo, so it's missing the second N. And PSA 10 versions of this Nintendo error pop up quite a bit. It's always kind of interesting to see the sale price ranging. I've seen as low as, I think, $800 or $900 and as high as like $1,400. But this one's somewhere in the middle. This one sold for $1,025. Next up, we have a Japanese base set Pikachu that does not have a rarity symbol. That's right, if you look in the bottom right corner of the card, there is no rarity symbol to show whether it's a basic, an uncommon, or a rare. And these were known as the first edition of the Japanese Pokemon cards. I believe this is the first set actually released. And they were planning on not having the rarity symbol for any Pokemon cards, but after this set, they changed their mind. And so whenever these pop up for sale in the Gem Mint 10, they always sell for a lot. And you can see this PSA 10 card was listed for $10,000, but had a best accepted offer price of $7,000. Regular PSA version of this card goes for around $144, so that gives the EVI 4,744%. Damn expensive. Which is number 4 this week on our list of EVI. Next up, we have a prime example of knowledge is power. We have a card, from my knowledge, that is not an error card that sold for $182.56. My best guess is that the buyer of this card thought that this was a miscut. Pikachu V Union is actually 4 different cards that come together, and so they have very thick borders like this. But to the untrained eye, I guess it could look like a miscut. And you can see that this buyer way overpaid. Also, you can see that the seller does not accept returns. Wonder why. Now, I could be 100% wrong here. Maybe there is a crazy error. But I think when the seller lists it as cut, not complete Pokemon card, I don't think they knew what they were doing, and neither did the buyer. If this was an error, the EVI was around 17,000%, which would be number 1 this week. But I do not add non-error cards to the top 10. Again, my show, I'll do what I want. If you are the buyer of this card and you're somehow watching this video, please talk to the seller and see if you can get your money back, because this is not an error. Again, from my understanding. Tragic.
Tragic!
Next up, we have a CGC4 Sabrina's Abra promo card with a miscut. Now, I talked about this card, I think it was week 9, or episode 9 of my Error Pokemon card series. So a little while ago, and I realized that it is from the same exact seller, which means the original buyer of this card fell through, and so the seller had to relist the card. And this happens a lot. I'll report on a card that sells for a crazy amount of money, like $100, and it's typically worth like $1 non-error version. And then the next week when I'm doing my research for the following episode, I will see that card up for sale again. So that makes me think that the buyer backed out and the seller had to relist the card. But I just found it interesting that that happens every now and then. So hopefully this buyer doesn't fall through for the seller. And this crazy miscut sold for $110 this week. Next up, we have a Sea King from Pokemon 151 with a low ink error. Now, if I saw the card on the right just by itself, I don't think I could point out that it had low ink. You can see that is a lighter orange than the non-error version, but I could definitely see how this card could get passed up by someone with an untrained eye. And don't get me wrong, that's not me saying I don't think this error is cool. I think it's very interesting and very cool. But I think sometimes it's hard to spot, and I wonder how many of these errors are actually out there that people just don't know. But props to the seller, they actually had both of these photos next to each other, both of the cards listed next to each other so you can see. That's why I put the non-error cards too, so you can see what the error actually is. And this card was listed for $125, but had the best accepted offer price of $75. And 4,338% was an EVI high enough to get number 7 on our list this week. Next up, we have a Snorlax S Shining Treasure EX Pokemon card, and this is a misaligned texture error. Now, your boy can finally spot this one. If you don't know, I have a very hard time telling misaligned textures on modern Pokemon cards, just my untrained eye. But this one wasn't too hard to spot. You can look above me here, and you can see that the black outline is just off for Snorlax. It's kind of shifted up and to the left a little bit. Very interesting card, and it sold for $26.66. Next up, we have a base set Squirtle with an inverted back and a miscut back. Now, I've been seeing these pop up more and more recently, and each one has the back that is the same misaligned and miscut, which makes me think that they are from the same sheet of Pokemon cards. Very interesting to trace these almost, 30-year-old cards back to the original sheet before they were cut. I think that's very interesting and why I love Air Pokemon cards. And this card had a very solid EVI, not top 10, but still very respectable, and sold for $60 this week. Here we have another base set Squirtle, but this one is shadowless, and this one has an obstruction error. The seller claims this is a one of one, and I have to agree with them. I have never seen an obstruction like this on Squirtle before, especially in this exact spot, which leads me to believe this is a one of one. You can see at the bottom of the card that a portion of it looks more faint than the rest of the card, a little bit lighter. And I believe this would be a water obstruction, that one of the RGB colors when it was getting put onto the card was missing when it was actually printed. And that leaves us with a card that sold for $94.50. And same with this one. Very respectable EVI, but not top 10. Next up, we have a Togekiss with a inverted back and a wonky miscut back. So similar to the Squirtle, but this one's actually a little bit tilted too. You can see there's more portion of another card showing on the top left than the bottom left. It shows that this error survives generations of Pokemon cards and is still prevalent today. And this card sold for $27 this week. Next up, we have a Japanese Venusaur CD promo card with a Hollow Bleed. Now, Hollow Bleed in vintage Japanese cards was very prevalent. It's very typical to see those darker spots on different parts of the card outside of the hollow. It's actually, I would say, maybe 1 and 2 even. But there are varying degrees of Hollow Bleed, so you don't always get the sparkly part of the card actually showing through. And that's what this Venusaur has. And by the way, this is my absolute favorite Venusaur artwork. I have this card myself. And Hollow Bleeds are actually due to an insufficient ink error. So if you want to give a fun fact around the dinner table tonight, why don't you use that one? And this gorgeous Venusaur CD promo sold for $87 this week. You guys, this card is a big deal. It's been said that this is the most expensive Blastoise card ever sold. First edition English Blastoise, not sold for as much as this. This Japanese base set no rarity Blastoise PSA 10 sold for $114,000. I can't even fathom that. You can see I had an awesome animation too. You see that card spinning? That was me. And I have a fun comparison for you. With this amount of money, you could buy the most expensive Toyota that is sold on the market right now, a 2024 Sequoia, fully spec'd out, with 32 PSA 10 Japanese base set Blastoises in the trunk. Or you could buy this one card. Absolutely love that the most expensive Blastoise ever sold is an error card. Maybe it's a variant. Either way, it doesn't matter. Average PSA 10 Japanese base set Blastoise goes for $945. So that gives the error value increase 11,963% and is obviously number 1 this week on our error value increase. Absolutely freaking incredible. If you made it to the end of the video, I love you. Thank you so much, and we will see you guys next week. Bye.